Oh, man! We're so high up! This is incredible! Definitely top 5 super battles for me. What about you?
I don't really keep track, kid. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Spider-Man! Come on!
Welcome back to another Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man breakdown with episodes 6, 7, and 8. This series continues to be absolutely amazing and actually feels like Spider-Man. So we're going to be starting off with episode 6 and the Easter eggs and references that happened during it. So first off, the episode starts off with Lonnie Lincoln getting kicked off the football team and being put on probation because he's been skipping classes and not showing up to games, showing that the 110th Street Gang has been ruining his future for being successful. He was smart, he was going to get a scholarship, and now that's all being taken away from him because of the choices he's made and the place he's found in this gang. But he also says he doesn't have to live up to everyone at the school, pretty much saying that the pressure he had from being this all-star football player and academic has been weighing on him, and with the gang, he doesn't have to do any of that. He doesn't feel like he has to put up an act, and he can just be him, which is definitely feels like with this gang, it's definitely been manipulating him and making him feel a certain way that he wasn't getting at school, so that's why he's kind of going down that darker path. We also have Lonnie's brother, Dre, being mad at him for being with the 110th Street Gang because of the fact that Dre was a screw up, and at the 110th he felt like he had a place, he felt like he belonged there, and it was somewhere where he didn't have to be compared to his older brother, which now, because Lonnie has taken his place in the gang, he no longer has that. So it definitely feels like something bad might happen to Dre, especially with the Scorpions following Lonnie around as he's walking through the neighborhoods and following him outside his house. So the Scorpions know where he lives, and the Scorpions also figured out where their base was. Now, in this episode, we also see that Jean has been sneaking around Oscorp, going up to Norman Osborn's office trying to sneak in. Now, this could tie into the Daredevil plotted episode where they're trying to get information on Norman Osborn because he's doing something shady. But we'll talk more about that in a bit once we get to the Daredevil part of the episode. Now, we also had in this episode Peter trying to talk to Nico about her being mad at him for inviting Harry to the movies, but she says she's not. But then he invites Harry to another movie night, but at his place. And we have them all together, and they seem to be getting along where Nico's growing on Harry slowly. But when they're looking at the movies at Peter's place, we get Tomb Buster, which is a Tomb Raider rift. We get Zaniac, which is a movie we actually saw during Loki Season 2, because they went to the premiere for Zaniac. And on top of it, the cover resembles the look of Zaniac in the comic. And Peter also pulled out Predator, a reference to the Predator movie. But while Peter is trying to hang out with his friends, we have Norman Osborn at a fundraiser for Lagos. And Lagos is the place where Wanda Maximoff blew up Crossbones during the start of Civil War and what set off the Sokovia Accord. We get to see Thunderbolt Ross make his appearance in this episode, where Norman Osborn goes up to him and talks to him about Spider-Man, showing him the suit and the hero and how Oscorp is funding the superhero that he must keep a top secret. He also has on the identity of Spider-Man as being John Gallo, and in the comics, his superhero identity is Ricochet. Now, Ricochet in the comics is actually a mutant who has the power of danger sense, which is just like Spider-Man's Spidey sense that allows him to sense danger. Now, the name Ricochet was actually also used by Spider-Man during the Identity Crisis storyline, so just another little Easter egg to that where they're pulling a lot of stuff from. Now, when Norman goes up to talk to Ross, he also mentions how how Ross is on the search for Captain America after the events of Civil War, so all tying back into the events of Civil War already playing out over these last 6 episodes. And this is where it really makes me feel like Norman is starting to be up to something, because he's working with Ross, showing him Spider-Man, showing him that he's kind of trying to get Oscorp into the hero game.
He also offers to help track down rogue Avengers, so he's after the heroes as well.
Which, you know, this could be him trying to create his own Avengers team, just like he made the Dark Avengers in Marvel Comics, while he was also running S.H.I.E.L.D. But as he's there, someone breaks into Oscorp, and he sends Spider-Man to go investigate, having Peter having to come up with some excuse to leave his friends in order to do his superheroing, which is a classic Spider-Man dual identity problem. As he tries to have a life outside of being Spider-Man, he runs into these problems where he has to leave and come up with excuses in order to do that. When he goes there, we find out that the person who broke into Oscorp was none other than Daredevil. He's got his black suit on, and when he shows up, they're playing the Daredevil theme music from the Netflix series, with Charlie Cox returning to voice the character, which all of this was just amazing. I love seeing Daredevil, I love seeing his black suit, and I also just love that they're referencing the Netflix series. The fight was a lot of fun with an inexperienced Spider-Man fighting Daredevil who has a lot more fighting experience, and I love how they even play into that joke where Spider-Man's like, "Oh, you're such a good fighter," and Daredevil says, "Well, you're not." So just like some good moments of him doing it, especially with Daredevil trying to help Spider-Man realize that Norman Osborn's actually hiding something. He's not the man he actually seems to be. Kind of teasing that Norman Osborn has more nefarious things going on. And after episode 7, it's definitely going to be a big reveal that Norman Osborn is definitely trying to do something that Spider-Man would not agree with. But in the end, Daredevil does take down Spider-Man. This fun moment of him bouncing his billy club off the wall and knocking Peter out, which I think is just like this great move to show Daredevil doing some badass moves. And I can't wait to see more of that when Daredevil Born Again comes out. Now, when we cut back to Harry and Nico, they're doing tarot cards, where one of the tarot cards is the devil, resembling none other than Mephisto. Just another little reference to Mephisto, showing him that he's eventually coming to the MCU and we will be seeing him. But also, the card reads that the dark forces that hold you back, which could be a reference to Harry's father being that dark force that's holding him back. And, just more little indications that something bad is going on. We have Nico talking about how her and Peter are like the dynamic duo, which is kind of a reference to Batman and Robin, because that is the traditional dynamic duo from comics. Now, we also have in this moment Harry telling Nico about Peter being Spider-Man because he assumes that she already knew because Peter tells her everything. Now, this leads into the next big moment of Peter Parker struggles with his dual identity because of Nico knowing that. It means Peter has been lying to her this entire time and she's hurt by it. Now, in this episode as well, Norman put it together that Otto is the one selling their tech, because Otto used to work at Oscorp and is selling tech that they were creating there as well. He also talks about how Otto wanted this fame, this recognition, and it makes me think that Norman Osborn definitely screwed over Otto, and that's why he has this hatred for him, and also why Doc Ock will be going after him later on. Plus, he tells Peter that Daredevil is actually working with Otto, which Peter kind of questions it because Daredevil seemed to be more sincere, because this is Norman trying to get any suspicion off of him and pushing it over to Doc Ock, making Spider-Man not question him and work with him no matter what. So definitely teasing more of the suspicious stuff that's actually going on here. And at the end of the episode, we see that Scorpion is being set up by Dr. Octopus with getting his mechanical tail and somewhat of a suit, which we'll dive into a moment. But episode 6 was cool. I love seeing Daredevil again, and it was just great to kind of see the setup for Norman Osborn being a lot more suspicious and showing that he's doing something behind the scenes that we have not seen yet. I think it's more to make his own superhero team and that he'll get corrupted with power and then he will become the Green Goblin, especially after the end of episode 7. But now, speaking of episode 7, let's jump into it. The episode starts off with Nico being mad at Peter for hiding his secret identity, which again dives into that problem that Peter Parker has, you having a dual identity and not being able to deal with it properly, because he always has the call for a hero and he has to help everyone he can. So it always struggles with him because he doesn't want to tell the people he loves because it could put them in danger if anyone ever found out who he really was. Do like how they're working with that to show his dual identity struggle, because that's a big thing with Spider-Man. One of the things I loved about this episode too was having Peter be a nerd. He's helping Norman try to figure out where Otto is, figuring out that he's actually using gamma radiation, which is the reference to the Hulk and his gamma radiation, because Otto is using it as the power source for the weapons. And I love how when they're going over this in this scene, they also mention the power of the sun, which is a reference to Spider-Man 2, where Dr. Octopus is trying to gain the power of the sun when Spider-Man goes against Dr. Octopus. But before we get into the Spider-Man stuff for this episode, we did have Harry going to Nico to try to talk to her, and I do love how he kind of has all the points written down, but he just has a bunch of different notes about how to talk to people, showing his kind of like influencer status, how he's trying to make sure he says the right words so people see him the right way. And I do like how when they're talking about what's going on with Peter and how Harry's trying to apologize for what's going on, you have Nico talking to her an amulet. Another instance where I definitely think that her parents might be trapped within it, or it has some kind of spirit that might be connected to her parents as well. Because after everything we've seen, it would make sense. Especially in this episode when they go to do the street race and the amulet glows bright before Nico hits the back of the car. It helps her move out of the way, definitely showing its magical properties and teasing her magical powers. Now, when they're talking on the top of the parking garage, we have Nico being mad at Harry and Peter for working together because it feels like Peter is moving on and leaving her behind. And I do like how this is kind of showing her struggle, right? She has one really good friend. She doesn't want to lose him. And I love how Harry talks about how he's not trying to take her away, but Peter is his first actual friend, not someone who's trying to use him. So both of them have a close friend with Peter, and I do love how they both need to understand each other to be friends with Peter, because neither of them are trying to take the other away from one another, and they're just all trying to be actual friends. So I do like how they're kind of showing that, and it also kind of feels like they're teasing a interest with Harry and Nico, which would be a change from the comics, and I'm curious to see what they're going to do from there. And I think that street racing scene was fun too, because you had that girl pulling up, roasting Harry and calling Nico his goth girlfriend, and then even giving a reference to Beetlejuice during this moment, and then having Clev, out of all people, show up once again for another cameo as he records a street race. And I really liked the scene because it was fun. It gave us a little bit of a tease for Nico's magical powers, but also gave us a really good moment afterwards where Nico feels like Peter didn't trust her to tell her about his secret identity, but Harry brings up a good point about how he explains that Peter is just trying to protect her from his enemies. So I really like how they're showing these different ideologies, how Nico feels betrayed, but explaining why Peter did it, like these good moments to show Peter's struggle with his dual identity. Now, as we move forward into the episode, we do have Pearl finding Lonnie at the 110th Street hangout because of Dre giving up his location. And I love how she's the one trying to get him out of the gang. She's trying to pull him back to the light, but then Scorpion shows up and all hell breaks loose, as Scorpion literally just messes everyone up with that mechanical tail. I'm pretty sure he killed a couple of them there as well. However, Lonnie makes the dumb decision to try to go up against him and gets knocked down, but luckily Spider-Man comes in for the save, having Peter realize that both Pearl and Lonnie are there, two of his friends, and he needs to get to safety. And this is also the first time Peter is going to be fighting one of the members of the Sinister Six. So really cool to start getting that, because he's a pretty tough villain for Peter to go against right now, with him still being pretty inexperienced, especially since Civil War happened differently in this universe. He didn't go against the Vulture, and in the MCU, the Vulture was more of a sympathetic villain, someone he could understand, where Scorpion is definitely not that type of character. He's full crazy, he's a maniac, and he just likes his power. It was interesting to see Peter go against him, get beaten, of course. Scorpion's able to go full power mode and break out of the webbing, and it feels like when he's doing that and the suit is overheating, it's bonding to his skin like it does in the Spider-Man PS4 game. Because this is one of Peter's toughest foes so far from the series, he gets taken down, with Scorpion distracting him with that steel beam and stabbing him right through the back, and then just wailing on him, having Peter lose to this big bad. And I thought this was going to be like poisoned. He was going to get poisoned like the Scorpion has in the comics, but maybe we'll be seeing that a little later down the road as the Scorpion gets used to his new suit and upgrades it himself. But as Peter's losing, we do have Norman Osborn sending the Goblin Glider after him, his Green Goblin Glider from the comics, and it's definitely teasing that he will become the Green Goblin, confirming that Norman Osborn's been working on other things behind the scenes without Peter knowing, and I bet you any money we will be seeing some sort of a Goblin before the end of the season. Now, I thought this episode did a great job setting up more of Peter's struggle, and also setting up more of the sus stuff that's coming on from Norman Osborn, plus setting up the Scorpion. Just a bunch of things to kind of go on during this episode to kind of push Spider-Man's character forward, especially because episode 8 starts off with the opening titles having a homage to Spider-Man No More. Another reference to the comic books, which we talked about a couple episodes ago, but I thought that was really cool the way they had that show up. And then we have Norman Osborn even having him in the medical wing and going over with Peter that his suit has been destroyed because the Scorpion ripped it apart. Even though Peter still wants to go to be a hero so that no one else will get hurt, Norman pushes him down, saying that if Peter cannot push himself to the next level and be that hero, he needs to stop being a hero. If he can't make himself be better, he can't be the hero he's supposed to be. Which is definitely a mirrored speech of the one Tony Stark gave him after Homecoming when he got beaten the first time, teasing that Spider-Man cannot be Spider-Man without the suit. Which then leads Peter Parker to go back to his homemade suit in Homecoming, but in this, it's leading to him getting a new suit with Harry's help, which at the end of the episode, we did have Harry giving him that classic red and blue Spider-Man suit, and I can't wait to see how it fully looks like in episode 9. But during the scene where Norman Osborn is telling him he needs to be a better hero, he does leave the room and go on a call with Ross, which definitely teases that he's working with Ross to make a new superhero team of some sort. Because Peter feels like he let down Norman, it feels like this is him being manipulated, making him not feel good enough to be Spider-Man, and making him feel like he's letting down the person he's working with. Plus, when we have Peter Parker go home to go see Aunt May, he makes an excuse that he got in a skateboard accident, and then he breaks down because he feels like he's screwing up. Nico is mad at him, he let Osborn down, and I absolutely love the scene between him and Aunt May. He feels like he can't be as strong as he's supposed to, but Aunt May telling him it's okay to be scared, it's not a weakness, giving us an important lesson, allowing yourself to be scared, and kind of learning from it. And I do love how Aunt May is being that comforting character here. But also her saying that she wishes Peter had someone to talk to like Ben, wishing he had like this male role model in his life. But the thing is, Peter has May, and that's what's special about the relationship. She's the one that helps him. She's his role model, and I really hope that he does look into that a little bit more, especially after he goes back to Norman Osborn to talk to him. Because later in the episode, when he is in the apartment, he sees a picture of Uncle Ben. This is actually the first appearance we've actually ever seen of Uncle Ben in the MCU entirely. So it is cool to kind of get a first look at something, even though it's an animated form. It's actually pretty important because we've never seen him before. Now, after he sees that, he goes to Norman thinking Norman's this role model, someone he can talk to and like confide in. But Peter has not realized how suspicious Norman is yet. And the thing is, Norman tells him he lost because he held back and Scorpion didn't. And saying that with great power comes great respect, showing that Norman doesn't understand what great power and great responsibility means, and showing that Norman just wants the power. He wants that power to gain the respect of everyone. He wants to be the person that's idolized, where it's definitely showing Norman's true colors here, where he's doing something a little bit more suspicious behind the scenes, where he definitely wants to gain the power that he thinks he so rightfully deserves, which is definitely going to tease his Goblin arc and him going full villain, as he's not going to get that, and he's going to blame Spider-Man for it. Now in this episode, they show us that Dr. Octopus is getting his hands on vibranium, which in the comics his arms are made out of titanium steel, but maybe in this universe he'll actually be using vibranium to do so. But while this is all going on, the cops bust down his door, and they're here to arrest him because Norman Osborn gave his information over to Thunderbolt Ross. Which this was a fun scene, having the cops try to get him and having his mechanical arms come out and knock him out and all that, teasing us that he will be getting those mechanical arms on his body later down the road. Well, he wouldn't be Dr. Octopus if he didn't have those. Also just having him use the other tech around his lab, which was fun, until he gets out and Ross is there. And then the Avengers theme comes on and Iron Man shows up in his classic red and yellow look. So it was cool to get an Avenger showing up to arrest Dr. Octopus. However, because I feel like Dr. Octopus is playing a way bigger role in this series, I don't think he's going to stay in prison. He's definitely going to break out with his partner Vincent, probably doing the job. And I'm very curious to see what they're going to do with his character, how he's going to go after Norman Osborn, and also for him to face Spider-Man in his full Dr. Octopus attire. However, as we move on, we do have Peter Parker having nightmares about Scorpion and losing his friends and family to him. And I think this is a big part about him dealing with some PTSD. This is the first time he's lost, the first time he's almost died, and now he has to deal with the consequences of that. He needs to become a better hero, and I love how he feels that, because he's scared of failing his friends, so it's going to push him forward to be a better hero and be that stronger hero that he wants to be, but not by the way Norman wants him to be, but by the way he wants to be. Let's jump over to Peter going over to Pearl's to work on their science project, because that gave us some important information about Lonnie, as Lonnie shows up to talk to Pearl. We have Lonnie telling her about how the 110th Street has his back, so he has to have theirs, teasing why Lonnie has this connection with the gang. He feels a community, he feels like he's connected to them, and he doesn't want to let them down because he feels like he's a part of something now. Which this leads to a sad moment of him leaving Pearl, because he wouldn't make the choice of leaving the gang for her, so instead he left her for the gang. And this is just showing where his dark side is going. And then we have Peter going after him to talk to him, being like, trying to connect to his friend, try to understand where he's coming from. He can't go back to the gang, it's a mistake. But Lonnie's doing it for him and his family, showing him that the 110th Street's going to protect him and his family and Harlem. So he's not willing to give that up, because it gives his family a chance. And that's what he's seeing right now. And instead of, thinking of his future where he could go with schooling, he's thinking of right here and now and what's important to him in the moment. So I'm very curious to see, him become Tombstone, because he's going to become Tombstone by the end of here. But this is just like showing his tragic backstory and giving us the reasons and giving us more of a connection to Spider-Man than ever before about why he's doing what he's doing. And I'm very curious to see how they're going to play with him a little bit more. But then we jump to the 110th Street gang meeting up with the Chameleon. We saw Dimitri a couple episodes ago, and now he's back in his full chameleon attire, which is pretty cool, even with his little weird mask. And he's giving them the info about where Otto's lab is. And because Ross has now arrested Otto, I feel like they're going to go break into his lab and get a bunch of gear that's going to turn them into the different powered villains that they are from the comics. Lonnie might take something that gives them a little bit more strength and durability, but also might turn him a little bit of that gray color like he is in the comics. Then we have Bulldozer, who might end up getting some gear that turns him more into that classic Bulldozer from the comics, like in the Wrecking Crew. So stuff's starting to really kind of pick up after this episode. We have 2 episodes left in the series, especially at the end of the episode where we have Harry telling him that whatever he thinks Spider-Man should do is the right thing to do. Pretty much telling him to trust his gut. Don't go with what other people tell you, do what feels right to you. Showing that Peter, because he has a good heart, he will ultimately do the right thing, which is a big thing for Peter Parker, realizing what he feels is the right thing to do, and that's what pushes him forward as a hero. Even at the end here, getting that classic blue and red suit, because Harry has listened to what he wanted and given him what he wanted for Spider-Man. And I really like to see what that happens, because it's pushing away from Norman Osborn and pushing more of Peter being his own hero once again. We even have Harry saying, "Go get him, Tiger," the classic line from MJ, and I love that we're kind of getting these little hints from the comics and giving us that personality from Peter Parker, as we kind of feel, as it feels like Peter Parker and Spider-Man, the proper representation of them. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with this series before it wraps up with the last 2 episodes. We have to have him going against the Scorpion, teases for the Dr. Octopus, and maybe he won't fight Dr. Octopus by the end of the series, but I feel like by the end of it, they'll tease the Green Goblin and stuff like that to give us a season 2, because we are getting multiple seasons, and I'm very excited to see what they're going to do, with the Spider-Man, and kind of what other heroes and villains we're going to see throughout it, because we've already seen a bunch from the Marvel Universe, and it's just the start. So let me know, what did you think of this episode? Were there any other Easter eggs or references you noticed during these 3? What are you liking from the series so far? I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe button. It helps out the channel a lot, and you get to stay up to date with all my Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man breakdowns and my Marvel and DC breakdowns as well. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you next week for the final of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 1.